Freeway Rick Ross. He was sentenced to life imprisonment after being convicted of trying to purchase more than 100 kilograms of cocaine from a federal agent. Ross became the subject of a controversy later that year when a series of articles by journalist Gary Webb in the San Jose Mercury brought to light the connection between one of Ross's cocaine sources and the CIA as part of the Iran-Contra scandal. His sentencing was later reduced to less than 20 years and released in September 2009. He's finally off the probation, the harassment, all of it. Back when this all first came out, people didn't believe the CIA was bringing drugs in.
I didn't believe it. It wasn't until the CIA themselves told me that they were involved. I was born here in Texas, Tyler. My mom decided that she wanted to try Los Angeles, give us an opportunity to have more than what she had. She was a maid here in Tyler, so she moved to L.A. I moved in during the Watts riot. So I go to school and, you know, trying to be like any other normal kid, you know, want to be a police officer, a firefighter, or airplane pilot. Started playing tennis in high school, you know, did pretty good, made all-city, was offered scholarships, but I couldn't read or write. So I found myself back in the streets in South Central Los Angeles. Couldn't get a job, you know, even though I was a very hard worker. Any number of things, just anything that I could do to start making a living, I was willing to do it. Before I started selling cocaine, you know, they started coming out with movies like Superfly and almost like priming you up for this lifestyle that you're about to get into. So when my friend comes and shows me cocaine, I'm interested.
Rock and roll, the drug culture, the CIA delivered the first suitcases of LSD. White kids weren't smoking marijuana. They delivered it. I mean, it's incredible. They primed the whole deal.
They get your mind ready so that when you get the opportunity that you're interested in.
It's called predictive programming. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's just what you're saying is absolutely right.
So when my friend comes and he shows me this stuff, never seen it before. It was yellowish white. And I'm like, well, I thought cocaine was supposed to be white. He's like, no, man, this is it. So he introduces it to me. He gives me a little bit, like $50 worth. He said, go and see what you can do with it. So I go around the neighborhood and I'm asking everybody. Nobody knows what it is. I mean, I'm going all over South Central LA. Finally, I run into a guy, he was a pimp, and he says, let me see it. And he takes it and he cooks it up and he says, oh, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And that's how I got started selling cocaine. And it went from there to this one person would buy from me and then another one would come and he would introduce me to somebody else until up, you know, some days I'm making $3 million a day.
So you got in on the ground floor of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally ground. So I desperately want to do something now. I need to make some money somewhere. So when this opportunity came, you know, I thought that it was a blessing from God. You know, I started off just helping Mike, who was my friend. You know, I'd make the money for him, give him all the money, and pretty soon I know the business. In my community, nobody knew what cocaine was.
Yeah, it was a rich white guy drug.
When I started selling cocaine, that's how I felt about cocaine, that it was another one of those things that they said, no, this is for white people and you guys can't have it. So I felt like I was bringing cocaine to my community to give us something.
But the CIA said, oh, you blacks want it? We're going to make something special for you. Here's how you make crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell the story. Did you ever use? Why were you so successful?
I did start using for a short time. You know, I got up to a point to where I probably had about $8,000 or $9,000. I thought I was rich. So, you know, when you're rich, you start experimenting, you know, with the drugs. And I looked up, all my money was gone. So I immediately quit using. You know, I went back and regrouped. You know, I learned that from tennis. When you're doing something wrong, you go back and you figure out what you're doing wrong. So I figured out that I couldn't use anymore. So I stopped using, and I went on to get rich. I started seeing the effects that cocaine was having inside of my community. And it wasn't the effects that I initially thought that it was going to have. You know, I started seeing people pushing baskets. I started seeing women walking the streets and women doing anything to get high. And I started to rethink my position. I threw my hands up. I said, you know what? I'm through with the cocaine business. I got enough money. I got more money now than I ever thought that I would have in my life. I got businesses. So I walked away. Government came back and indicted me for the things that I'd already done. Went to prison. Did 5 years in prison. Immediately after I got out, they had Danilo Blandon started to call me. And his goal was to get me back inside of drugs, but I didn't want to go back. I was trying to go straight. He hounded me for like 6 months to introduce him to one of my friends. Once I made the introduction, my friend handed him a bag of money. The cops swooped in, arrested all of us, and they got me for brokering the deal, for making the introduction, saying that I knew that they were going to be doing a drug deal, and for that reason that I aided and abetted the crime. For that, doing that crime, they gave me a life sentence. While I was sitting in jail doing this life sentence, fighting my case, I was approached by a reporter, Gary Webb. Well, Gary came down and he saw me. He started talking about that I was in something bigger than, what I thought I was. But, also, too, Alex, that there were some cops on my case. They called themselves the Freeway Task Force. And those cops were robbing and stealing and they let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. They got indicted as well. They was taking the drugs from one person, planting them on another person and selling them to this person and just a criminal enterprise. I mean, the whole war on drugs is just like one big hoax of one person benefiting this one, another one benefiting that way. But at the end of the day, guys like myself get caught in the middle. I believe that we're the ones who's paying the biggest price. Not necessarily myself, because I knew I was selling drugs, and I knew that I shouldn't have been selling drugs after a period of time. Once everything came out and I interviewed with the CIA, the CIA came down to my jail cell.
Webb talked about how you got threatened out in the hall, threatened to kill him and stuff. They didn't just threaten to kill his kids. I mean, the feds themselves that were there, not just the CIA, they were basically all in on it. It's
the DA, they sandbagged us during trial. The court has a thing where they call a pre-trial hearing, where the informant is supposed to come to like a little room. I couldn't be there, but my lawyer was supposed to be there, and Gary was supposed to be there. Well, anyway, Blandon comes to this hearing, and when they get in the room and my lawyer wants to ask him some questions, and the guy said, everything that I got to say, I'm going to say during trial. So we don't know what this guy is going to say. All the information that Gary has, we don't have this information. And Gary's not giving it to us. He didn't give us this information at first because Gary knew I had the relationship with LA Times. So I felt that Gary was worried about me leaking his information to Jesse Katz at LA Times because, me and Jesse Katz still had a relationship where we talk once in a while. So Gary didn't give it to us. And he gets up from the trial table and he goes and he talks to Blandon and then he goes back and he asks Gary, because Gary's feeding him like little bits of pieces.
And that was smart. That way the LA Times, now admitted run by the CIA, the editor CIA, trying to cover all this up. You didn't know that. He could only ask it while it was happening live, so he would get the intel, and they couldn't spin it.
They tried to say that I told Gary how to put it together. They said that, right?
Yes.
That Rick Ross dreamed this all up and put this together and fed it to Gary and got Gary to buy into it. But I didn't know none of this. They gave me more credit than I deserved. It baffles me that people don't know this. I'm like, the CIA admitted it. They got a report. You can go to their website, and the report is on their website, and people don't know it. We in court, and Gary's asking my lawyer this, and then the judge recognized what's going on, and she was like, well, why you keep talking to this reporter? Why are you running back and forth to him in the courtroom? I want you to stand here and do this. We're not on a fishing expedition because, Gary was asking about certain names, Enrique Bermudez, and then Blandon talks about, well, my boss goes on a fishing trip with George Bush, and when they come back, they say the ends justify the means. I'm still learning what's going on. So then eventually we finish trial. They give me the life sentence, and couple months later, Gary's story come out. Gary sends me a copy. I get a copy the day before it comes out. I call Gary on the phone, and then we start to talk, and he starts to tell me, about the CIA being involved, about the Contras. Because, I really didn't know what the Contras was. Definitely did not know that they were backed by the CIA and Ronald Reagan and George Bush. Had no clue that they was backed by that.
It's come out Ronald Reagan, not defending him. He didn't know. It was George Herbert Walker Bush running all that as well, keeping it from him. So if the president didn't know, Rick, you can't blame you for not knowing.
When it comes out, Gary runs it down to me. He starts to tell me, and I'm like, oh, this guy, Gary, he's out there. A couple of days later, the OIG is at my cell. The CIA is at my cell. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is there.
You had a chance once it came out that it had been going on to throw Gary Webb under the bus. You wouldn't do it.
Oh no! I respect what Gary does, what he did, and even.
Well, you're right. He's still alive. He's living on through his
through his story. Absolutely. Hey, it's his spirit that people have to respect. This guy stood up for justice. Yeah, he told me he was going to keep going. That he was going to get to the bottom of it, and that he wasn't going to stop until he was done with it.
And of course, he was never discredited. That's why they had to kill him, because they tried to kill him in the media. And then that didn't work, so they just killed him.
Well, the internet saved the story. Once it hit that internet, it just started going from person to person to person to person.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
Government involvement sterilizing people would come out. It has. Government involvement shipping drugs in would come out. It has. It came out in the 60s. Symbols are powerful, and the globalists have hijacked the symbols of America. They've turned them into their own symbols. Well, we are restoring the idea of the true republic, not the counterfeit globalist empire, by promoting the icon George Washington and others. That's why we're rolling out an 100% made in America line of incredible pro-liberty apparel. We are repopularizing liberty. We are helping fellow Americans rediscover what made this country great. We are the spirit of 1776. We are 1776 worldwide. We are all brothers and sisters in arms in the animating contest of liberty in the long march towards humanity's ultimate destiny of freedom. Visit madein1776.com today and vote with your dollars to promote truly made in America, high quality products, and promote the ideals of liberty.